Now, when it comes to Star Wars, I never really grew up with the franchise. I was more of a Harry Potter, Doctor Who kid, but even though with Doctor Who, I kind of stopped watching around about the time of Matt Smith's run. I think about halfway through I stopped watching then. But regardless of that, I was obviously aware of Star Wars, I just never seen it. It's interesting though, because I remember owning the Anakin Skywalker lightsaber that came out during Revenge of the Sith. You know, the one that turned from red to blue? I remember owning that, and obviously I played LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga when I was younger, because I mean, like, that game was my childhood. I love that game. But it wasn't until my early teens, I think the year before The Force Awakens came out, where I went and bought the original trilogy on DVD, and I sat down, and I watched them, and then I watched the prequels, and I became a fan of Star Wars. It's weird though, I wouldn't call myself a hyper fan of Star Wars, but to the general audience, I look like a hyper fan. Like, I haven't read any of the Legends books, I haven't, read the comic books, I haven't played a lot of the old school video games, like, I am more or less a movie watcher of Star Wars. I've just watched them a bunch of times, and I know a lot of information about Star Wars. But the thing is with Star Wars is that as the sequel trilogy was coming out, my relationship with Star Wars just fluctuated. Like, at the end of the day, I like Star Wars as a franchise, but I won't lie and say that it is incredibly overrated. I'm not denying the iconography of Star Wars. I mean, everything from the set design, to the costume design, to the characters, to the lore, to the world building, to the music, to the scores, to the sound effects, to the impact it's had on filmmaking and visual effects. I'm not denying the importance of Star Wars, but when it comes to the narrative of Star Wars, the storytelling, the most objectively important part of filmmaking, I think the storytelling of Star Wars is all over the place. Yes, including the original trilogy. That might be a very hot take, but I'll get into it further on to the video. So, the way I'm structuring this video, I'm just going to go through in episode order, reviewing the films, giving you my quick thoughts on them, and, dropping some hot takes. I don't know, we'll see how this goes. So, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is an awful film. It's so boring. It's probably one of the most boring films I've seen in my entire life. There's no denying the impact it's had on filmmaking and the way we use visual effects and motion capture and CGI and all that. I'm not denying that. But just because you're a technologically innovative film does not mean you're a good film. The acting is wooden, the plot is boring, and overall, the only thing the film has that's going for it is the score and the Duel of the Fates. I will say, I admire what George Lucas was trying to do with The Phantom Menace. He was trying to introduce everyone to this new political world with councils and tax evasions and blockades and separatists and all that. He was very much trying to make it a critique on the Clinton and Bush era of US politics, and in many ways, it seemed like he was trying to take a page out of the Dune book by Frank Herbert, because obviously Star Wars has been heavily influenced by Dune, and it seemed like George Lucas with the prequels wanted to make this intriguing political thriller very similar to Dune, where there's plots within plots, and characters are scheming, there are machinations and all that. It's just that the politics he decides to focus on in the prequels are just incredibly dull and boring. Like, I'm sorry, no one cares about tax evasion and blockades. I know this because I studied the British Empire for my A-levels, and that is the most boring part about the British Empire, about the blockades and the taxation. No one cares. If you want to create an interesting political world, don't bring in the minutiae of taxes and blockades, because no one gives a shit. People care about assassinations and larger geopolitical influences. They don't care about taxes and blockades and economics. If you want to put that in your story, that's fine. Just don't make it a central factor to the catalyst of your story. Now, it's not to say that there aren't any interesting things in The Phantom Menace. Like, there are. The whole Gungan City underwater world is really cool, and honestly, I love what George Lucas was trying to do there. It was something new and unique. And the bit where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Jar Jar are in the submarine and they get attacked by that sea monster, it's really cool. It's just that the problem with it is that I don't feel anything while I'm watching it. That's the thing about The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace just feels so emotionally devoid of anything. Everything just feels so robotic. I mean, the acting just feels so lifeless. Like, what a waste of Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn. What a waste of Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. The only actor in this film that feels like an actual human that is expressing emotion and feels charismatic on screen is Ian McDiarmid as Palpatine. Like, he shows up halfway through the film and you're just like, oh my god, wow, an actual human being, that's insane. And whilst we're on the subject of actors, Jake Lloyd as Anakin Skywalker is not that bad. I mean, he's not delivering a fantastic performance, but he's a kid. Like, he's not that bad. The internet has made him out to be like one of the worst child actors ever. And yeah, he wasn't great, but also he's not that annoying. Same thing goes for Ahmed Best's Jar Jar Binks. He's not that bad. Like, sure, Jar Jar is unfunny and a little bit annoying, but he's not that bad. And that's the thing that baffles me about fandom, and particularly the Star Wars fandom, is just how vitriolic and mean and hateful and spiteful they can be towards people who were just in a film. Like, you can't just go around hating on people for being in a film you don't like, trolling them, calling them names. There's no point. Like, it's so stupid, and it always repeats itself with fandom. It doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you go around harassing a kid for being in a Star Wars film you don't like? Why would you go around harassing Daisy Ridley for being in a Star Wars film you don't like and driving her off social media? Same thing with Kelly Marie Tran in the sequel trilogy. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, just because you didn't like the film does not give you the right to go around hating on people. Like, reading the stories of what happened to Jake Lloyd growing up, it's disgusting. It's horrific. But yeah, Phantom Menace overall is pretty boring, and I don't care for it. The only good scene is Duel of the Fates, and that's kind of it. So, Attack of the Clones is a bad film. At times, it's entertainingly bad, and the other times, it's pretty boring and forgettable and just bad. The Anakin-Padme romance is hilariously bad. Like, Anakin is just being a creep, and Padme is just like, you're being weird, until all of a sudden she is just like, actually, no, I love you, and they run away and get married at the end. Like, what? The ironic thing is that in the film, Anakin and Padme have no chemistry at all, but if you look at the behind-the-scenes documentaries, Natalie Portman has like a massive crush on Hayden Christensen, which is really funny. Like, I think they dated at the time as well or something. It's just that the real-life attraction and or romance does not show up on screen at all.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating. And it gets everywhere.
And look, Hayden Christensen is not great in this, and to his credit, no one is really great in this, aside from maybe Christopher Lee and or Ewan McGregor. Now, I'm not saying there aren't any good scenes in the film, there are. In fact, one of the scenes that really sticks out to me is Anakin on his speeder bike as he's going after the Tusken Raiders who kidnapped his mother, and Duel of the Fates is playing in the background. Like, it's really cool. Like, the sun is setting all behind him, and it's all like do-do-do-do-do-do-do. It's really awesome. Like, I don't know why Duel of the Fates is playing, but it's really cool regardless of that. And another scene I ironically love is the scene where Anakin is talking to Padme after he's just killed the Tusken Raiders, and he's all just like, I killed them, Padme, but not just the men, but the women and the children too.
They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals. I hate them.
And then Padme's all just like, to be angry is to be human. And it's like, what, woman? He's just told you. What? Like, it's fantastic stuff. And yeah, Christopher Lee is in this as Count Dooku, and he's good, I think. I don't know, I don't really remember. The thing about Dooku is that he kind of just should have just been Darth Maul. Like, the weird thing about the prequel films is that they have different secondary villains in every film, when realistically, if they kept Darth Maul around and had him as like the central secondary villain throughout the trilogy, it would have worked much better. But, like, he shows up again in Clone Wars or something. Like, I don't know, I haven't watched Clone Wars. And yeah, we're also introduced to other characters like Jango Fett and young Boba Fett and all that. And yeah, it's cool. And the CGI is pretty bad in this film, I guess. And yeah, that's kind of it. I don't really have anything else interesting to say. I love Revenge of the Sith. It's funny, I used to hate this film. The first time I watched it, I hated it. I thought it was so corny, I thought the acting was so wooden and bad, and I thought the CGI was terrible. But over the years, I sort of just grown to love this film. It's probably in like my top 3 or 4 favorite Star Wars films. Like, I really enjoy this film. Like, it's not perfect, but with this film, you could tell that George Lucas actually wanted to tell this story. The story of Anakin Skywalker turning to the dark side and becoming Darth Vader is done really well in this film. I really like it. Also, I think that this is the only Star Wars prequel film that you actually need to see. Like, don't bother with Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. They feel so irrelevant compared to Revenge of the Sith. Seeing Anakin Skywalker turn to the dark side is really cool, And I love Hayden Christensen in this film. To me, he very much carries off and pulls off the heroic Anakin Skywalker falling to the dark side. In the opening of the film, he's charismatic and likable. Things like,
This is where the fun begins.
that's the Anakin Skywalker I imagined when Obi-Wan says, and he was a good pilot, and he was a good friend. The Anakin Skywalker we see in this film and his relationship with Obi-Wan in this film, this is where I buy that Obi-Wan and Anakin were good friends. Also, Hayden Christensen's facial acting in this film is incredible. Granted, in some shots, the colored contacts are doing some of the work, but in scenes where he's like killing the kids in the Jedi Temple, the look on his face is fantastic. Like, he really knocks it out of the park in this one. And the attack on the Jedi Temple in Order 66 is fantastic. The music that plays when Anakin kills the younglings is fantastic. The score for this is just amazing. John Williams knocked it out of the park in Revenge of the Sith, like Battle of the Heroes, the March on the Jedi Temple. It's fantastic. I love Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan Kenobi in this film. I love his whole subplot with General Grievous. It's great. The memes. I love the memes in this film.
Hold on. This whole operation was your idea.
Hello there.
And most importantly, the thing I love most about Revenge of the Sith is the Battle of Heroes. Obi-Wan versus Anakin on Mustafar is so goddamn great. Like, not just the lightsaber fight, but the corny wooden dialogue that leads up to it is just, it's fantastic. Like, yeah, the dialogue is corny and wooden, but for some odd reason there's a charm to it in this one. You turned her against me! You've done that yourself. You will not take her from me! Your anger and your lust for power have already done that. You have allowed this Dark Lord to twist your mind until now. Until now you've become the very thing you swore to destroy. Don't lecture me, Obi-Wan. I see through the lies of the Jedi. I do not fear the dark side as you do. I have brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire. Your new empire? Don't make me kill you. Anakin, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy! If you're not with me, then you're my enemy. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. I will do what I must. You will try. I love it. It's so good. And the lightsaber battle itself is just fantastic. The choreography is so fast-paced. Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen really just knocked it out of the park in this with their stunt training. It's fantastic. Like, people say that the choreography in the prequels are too flashy and it feels too much like a dance. I don't care. It looks so cool. Like, the bit where, like, they're in the corridor and then, like, they link arms and they clash. It's amazing. I love it. Yes, it's flashy, but it also feels realistic. I think Shadowversity did like an hour-long breakdown, and he gave it a thumbs up. He gave it a seal of approval. Like, yeah, this, whilst being a flashy fight, is logically and choreographically sound. I mean, sure, yeah, the bit where, like, they're doing the Obi-Wan spins in the center, and then, like, they force push each other. Like, yeah, the spin there is kind of irrelevant, but I also kind of like it, and granted, this is just a BS fanboy explanation of, it's very much Obi-Wan and Anakin are so in tune with one another, they've trained with each other, and they've seen each other fight for years together, that they are just in tune with one another, and whilst Anakin is the more ferocious fighter, they balance each other out quite nicely because they know how each other operates and fights. Like, yeah, it's a nerdy fanboy BS explanation, but still, it's cool. Like, the moment where, like, they walk onto the walkway and Anakin kicks Obi-Wan in the face and then Duel of the Face starts kicking in, it's like, it's so good. Yes, there are silly things in Revenge of the Sith, like Padme dying of a broken heart and all that. Like, yeah, there are problems with it, but at the end of the day, I just really enjoy this film. But before we move further, I think the main problem that I have with the prequel trilogy is that the prequels, especially the first two, feel so irrelevant and disjointed to Revenge of the Sith, where it's almost, you kind of wish that the entire prequel trilogy was just the Clone Wars. Like, why are we leaving, you know, the bulk of the juicy story of Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi's friendship? Why are we relegating that to a children's cartoon show when that should be in the main trilogy of your prequel films? Especially since the end of Attack of the Clones is the beginning of the Clone Wars, and the beginning of Revenge of the Sith is the end of the Clone Wars. So when it comes to Rogue One, I liked it. I've only seen it the one time, and that was in the cinema. And I liked it, it's just that it doesn't really stick well with me. The only thing I visually and distinctly remember about that film is the Darth Vader hallway fight, which is obviously just iconic as hell. Though, slight nitpick I do have with it is the way Darth Vader is fighting and moving in that scene just isn't how he moved in the original trilogy, and it's very much because we've advanced so much in technology since the original trilogy, we can now have Darth Vader do all these cool things that we've always wanted to see him do as children, and like, it's funny now, because you see like things like The Mandalorian, where we're deep faking Luke Skywalker to see Luke Skywalker be the heroic hero we've always wanted him to be, especially prime Jedi Luke Skywalker, we can now actually do that visually, and it just seems like now filmmakers are now putting their childhood fantasies onto the screen without actually thinking whether or not it fits in terms of continuity. Like, Darth Vader and Rogue One does not fight like how Darth Vader fought in A New Hope. Like, we don't get two old men, you know, robotically moving around and stuff. We're getting like flashy like twirls and stuff that he's never done before, which on screen looks visually awesome, but also in terms of continuity, it doesn't make any sense. Especially if you watch Rogue One and A New Hope directly back to back. Like, you go from Darth Vader being awesome to him moving around like a man in a stiff rubber suit. Also, I'm not really going to do a section for Solo just because I haven't seen Solo and I don't really care to see Solo. Like, I've heard mixed things. Some people say it's good, some people say it's bad. To me, the only real selling point of that film is Emilia Clarke, but even then, I kind of, like, don't care to watch the film, so, eh. So, when it comes to the original Star Wars film, I like the film a lot. It's just that it falls into the same trap I think the original Rocky does, and that is the editing for that film is so slow, especially compared to modern day standards. Like, the editing in A New Hope is just way too damn slow. I'm sorry, that opening 20 minutes is, oh my god. I do not care to see C-3PO and R2-D2 wandering the deserts of Tatooine for 20 minutes. Like, it's so dull. I mean, it's probably because I haven't grown up with this film, but yeah, the pacing for me in this film is just too slow. Like, we don't see Luke Skywalker until like 25 minutes into the film or something, and it's like, that's where the actual story picks up and is interesting. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like this film, and in fact, I respect it a lot. The story for this film is so iconic, and not only that, it is the template of the hero's journey archetype that we use today. And it's really well written. And for the time, the visual effects and special effects and set design and costuming was revolutionary. Like, don't get me wrong, the fight choreography between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader is not that great. In fact, it's pretty bad, but I kind of, like, love it in an ironic way. But I mean, also, the characters in this film are just iconic. Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, Obi-Wan Kenobi, R2-D2, C-3PO, Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin. Like, the cast is all great. You've also got iconic set pieces like the Death Star trench run. And I mean, Binary Sunset is probably the best scene in the entire Star Wars saga. It is perfection. It really does just capture that feeling of being stuck and wanting more from life. And just the score for that scene is phenomenal. John Williams' Binary Sunset theme, the Force theme, it never fails to give me goosebumps whenever I watch A New Hope. It's fantastic. Now, when it comes to The Empire Strikes Back, I love this film. This is the best Star Wars film. It's my favorite Star Wars film. It's so good. The story structure, it's just iconic. Everything that is great about this film, I think, has already been said on the internet. I don't think there's much I can add, aside from the fact that I just love everything with Luke and Yoda on Dagobah, and the training, the spirituality behind the Force and the philosophy behind the Force. Harrison Ford as Han Solo is just incredible. His relationship with Princess Leia in this film, their romance blossoming, is amazing. You got Billy D. Williams as Lando Calrissian. He's great. The Battle of Hoth is incredible. The lightsaber duel between Luke and Vader in Bespin. Oh my god, I love it. It's so good. I love the silhouette shots. Like, for all of you who don't know, I love silhouette shots, and the opening to the Bespin fight is gorgeous. I love it so much. Just, this movie's fantastic. Like, that's all that can be said. It's the best one. Now, Return of the Jedi, on the other hand, I'd say I like 2/3 of the film, maybe. Like, I like the stuff with Jabba the Hutt, and I like the stuff with Luke and Vader, and the Death Star trench run and all that. I like all that. The thing is about Return of the Jedi is I hate the Ewoks. Everything that happens on Endor to me is so boring. Like, I don't care. And it just looks really goofy seeing these stormtroopers get killed by spears and rocks and just... It's bad. I don't like the Endor stuff. Also, Harrison Ford isn't really that great in this movie. He's kind of just like, I'm in this one, I guess. Another thing too that does bug me a bit about Return of the Jedi is the revelation that Luke and Leia are brother and sister. Not that it's a bad reveal, it's just that you can very much tell that George Lucas, when writing the Star Wars trilogy, the original ones, was just making this up as he went along. Like, if the case was that Luke and Leia were brother and sister and they were supposed to be the whole time, why the hell did George Lucas keep having them kiss in, like, the previous two films? And that's the thing, when people go, the original Star Wars trilogy is so amazing because they're so tightly written and it feels like one big story, I'm like, not really. You can very much tell George Lucas is just making this up as he goes along. But to me, the real power of Return of the Jedi, the part where the film is at its strongest, is between Luke and Vader and the Emperor. That stuff is all fantastic. The lightsaber duel between Luke and Vader is great. I love the filmmaking in it. I love the score. I love the lighting. It's just perfect. The moment where Darth Vader's just like, sister, you have a twin sister. If you won't be turned, perhaps she will. And Luke's just like, never! And starts whacking him. And then there's that great shot where, like, the camera dollies and, like, Luke and Vader are fighting and, like, they get obscured by the staircase and stuff. It's so good. I love that stuff. That is the strongest part of Return of the Jedi. And in many ways, Return of the Jedi wraps up the original trilogy nicely enough that you don't need the sequels. Like, you really don't. If Star Wars to you starts and ends with A New Hope and ends with Return of the Jedi, that's it. That's kind of all you need. I love The Force Awakens. Yes, I know it's basically just A New Hope but redone. But to me, I love the way J.J. Abrams made this movie. I love the pacing, I love the humor, I love the way it's shot, I love the way it's paced, I love the characters, I love a lot of the dialogue. It's really fun and witty. Harrison Ford's Han Solo is very funny in this film.
I like this guy.
Granted, I don't like the fact that we regressed him back to being a smuggler and a deadbeat dad. That stuff could have been interesting if we had seen the context behind it, but because we don't, it does feel like it's a bit of a letdown. And obviously, the biggest failing of the sequel trilogy is that we didn't get a shot of Han, Luke, and Leia together whilst Carrie Fisher was still alive. Like, it's just so stupid that they didn't get that on film. Like, that was history to be made, and they didn't do it. But the thing is with Force Awakens is that whilst it does follow the same plot structure as A New Hope, to me, it does the thing where it gives you something familiar, but then also gives you something new and intriguing. Like the stuff with Kylo Ren and what happened to Luke Skywalker. Why is Luke Skywalker vanished? Who is the First Order? Who is Snoke? All these questions and mysteries it raises are interesting. It's just that they're all squandered by The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. As a standalone film, if I pretend that The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker don't exist, I can really enjoy Force Awakens. Though I will say, I will critique the film for blowing up Starkiller Base. I think it would have been a much more stronger and subversive ending if they didn't destroy the entire base, but instead they just destroyed the laser. Because by doing that, it also helps to explain why the First Order are so powerful in The Last Jedi when, in the end of Force Awakens, their entire military operation, their big planetary base just got destroyed. How the hell are they able to attack the Resistance with such force and ferocity that they do at the beginning of The Last Jedi if their entire base has just been blown up? I love Finn. John Boyega's Finn is fantastic. His story is so interesting. The fact that he was a stormtrooper that broke through his Imperial conditioning and then decided to desert the First Order and join the rebellion. It's really good stuff. And I love his friendship with Poe Dameron. I love Oscar Isaac as Poe Dameron in this. I love the moment where Finn and Poe escape the Star Destroyer and the TIE Fighter. Like, it's so good. There is such a fun and thrill that J.J. Abrams manages to capture, especially because the chemistry between Oscar Isaac and John Boyega is fantastic. Like, when they destroy the TIE Fighters chasing them, they're all just like, yeah, whoa! Like, you feel it. You feel the chemistry. You feel the brotherly bond and connection. That's right, I think they feel more like brothers and or best friends than they do a gay couple, but, you know, that's me. Not that I would have been opposed for them not to be a gay couple, it's just that, to me, Oscar Isaac and John Boyega had more of a brother friendship type chemistry. Like, they felt like best of friends rather than lovers, but you know. Rey was actually my least favorite out of the main trio coming out of Force Awakens. Like, I thought she was fine, but yeah, nothing on Daisy Ridley. I mean, I love Daisy Ridley. It's just that the character herself just felt a bit too perfect, and the bit where she beats Kylo Ren at the end was interesting. I was like, oh, she beat him. How does she do that? But obviously the film was hinting that there was a much deeper secret to Rey, that, she was Force sensitive and really strong in the Force, but why? And we sort of get an answer in Last Jedi, but it's a really half-assed answer.
Darkness rises and light to meet it.
But one of the characters I just thought was so fascinating in Force Awakens was Ben Solo, Kylo Ren. Adam Driver is fantastic in this role. He is the probably most consistent thing that is good about this trilogy. And yeah, you had people on the internet being like, he's such a whiny little bitch, he's a Darth Vader wannabe. I'm like, yeah, that's the point. The point is that Ben Solo is so tied towards the light side that even when he tries to be dark and evil and commit atrocities like Darth Vader, he is naturally being drawn back towards the light side. And when people complaining about the temper tantrums and all that, I'm like, yeah, that fits his character. It's all character stuff. It adds to his character. He wants to be angry and like a Sith, but he just can't be, so he has to overcompensate. But in summary, I love The Force Awakens. Sure, it is just A New Hope reskinned, but to me, the new ideas it was presenting, the new mysteries, made it feel interesting and intriguing and unique and new. Yes, it was giving me something familiar, but it was also giving me something new that was intriguing me. And the problem with that is that the sequels don't continue the intriguing mystery threads. They just sort of shut them off, being like, nope, don't want to do that. So when it comes to The Last Jedi is a film I used to hate, and as the years have gone by, the hatred I have for it has lessened a bit. I still don't like the film, but I no longer have this searing venom I used to have towards the film. The film to me is just a collection of half-baked ideas, specifically the stuff to do with the dark side and the light and the Jedi and Rey and Luke and Kylo Ren and all that. The other stuff, mainly the Resistance subplot and the Canto Bight subplot, is just terrible, and if anything, the film doesn't really need it at all. If the last time we saw the Resistance was at the beginning of the film as they escaped the planet, that would have been fine to me, and we join up with them at the end, I would have been perfectly fine with that. Because to me, The Last Jedi needs to be a film about Rey, about Luke, about Kylo Ren, and about Snoke. Especially since the film wants to start deconstructing the idea of the Jedi. Luke and Rey have a couple of interesting discussions, but the discussions stop about halfway through than they should be, and no one talks. The scene where Rey and Luke are talking about the Jedi Order and how they allow Palpatine to rise to power. Luke brings up very valid points, and then Rey counter-argues with that, and then Luke kind of just walks away, and that's it, and it's no, keep the conversation going, this is interesting. And the thing is too, is that there's the deleted scene where Luke teaches Rey the third lesson, and he basically shows her this pirate ship that's heading towards the island, and he's just like, that right there is a band of raiders that's coming to destroy and pillage the village. And Rey's just like, we have to help them. And Luke's just like, do you know what a true Jedi would do? Nothing. And you're kind of there just like, no, the Jedi would do something. They are peacekeepers in the galaxy. And you could have used the idea to point out the flaws of the Jedi Order we saw in the prequels and how they basically became lazy and stopped doing their jobs. That could have been an interesting idea. But no, Rian Johnson just sort of changed the narrative of what a Jedi is and basically used it to fit his own narrative, when that's not what the Jedi were supposed to do. The Jedi were peacekeepers across the galaxy.
For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic.
And then with the whole Jedi Order, you have the deconstruction of Luke Skywalker, where he is no longer the hopeful optimist we saw in the original trilogy. He is now a pessimist, curmudgeonous old man, sort of just, moaning and kind of just being like, go away, leave me alone, I'm gonna die. And him wanting to die made no sense. If he wanted to go to Arc 2 to die, why did he leave a map to the Resistance so that in their deepest, darkest time of need, they could use the map to find Luke Skywalker and bring him back into the fray? Why would he leave them a map if he went to the island to die? That doesn't make any sense. To go into exile, yes, that makes perfect sense, because that's what Jedis do. To die and then leave them a... What? And look, the idea of deconstructing Luke Skywalker and making him out not to be the hero we used to know, but instead someone that fed into his own idea of legend, of that he was the famous Jedi Master Luke Skywalker and he could do no wrong, who is basically bought into his own legend that he is pure good, and when he tries to kill his nephew basically turns to the dark side and he ruins everything. That in itself is an interesting idea, but it's a half-baked idea because, one, the film doesn't show us the flashbacks of Ben and Luke training with each other. The film instead just shows us flashbacks from false narrator perspectives where we see Luke trying to be more gentle, and then we see Ben's where, Luke is much more evil looking, and then we see the true version of events, and it's kind of like, nah, I needed more of Luke and Ben training. I needed to see young Ben's mental state. I needed to see older Luke's mental state. And I needed basically more time with him training. In many ways, The Last Jedi should have been a series of flashbacks of Luke at the Jedi Academy with Ben. And then it should have also been weaved narratively with the events happening in current day. But it isn't. It's just a bunch of half-baked ideas and philosophical ideas. And that's it. They don't really do anything. Particularly with Rey. Rey, to me, is just boring. She is perfect, and her only real driving motivation is to find out who she is. And the answer that she is the product of no one is fine, even though in Force Awakens it very much seemed like that they were hinting at that she has some sort of a legacy in some way. Specifically since she is so powerful with the Force. But her being a nobody, fine, sure, whatever, it's just that, the way Force Awakens set it up, it felt like there was supposed to be something more there. Like, her fighting and training style doesn't make any sense. Luke didn't train her or teach her anything. She just knows how to do all these things, even though she's using a lightsaber when she's naturally been using a staff, and that's a completely different fighting style. Also, when it comes to the choreography, Daisy Ridley is just kind of just swinging the lightsaber around like it's a bat, and it's just the most uncoordinated thing, and it's like, how is she not dead? And the thing with Rey's internal conflict is that the film downplays the idea that she should have turned to the dark side. Because when Luke is training Rey and Rey immediately goes towards the dark, he's just like, you went straight towards the dark. Leaving the question of Rey basically should have turned to the dark side at the end of this film, and Ben Solo should have turned to the light. And another thing too is that when people talk about The Last Jedi, some people are just like, The Last Jedi did all these new and original things and people didn't like it. And I'm like, no, they didn't. They just rehashed the stuff from Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi and merged it into one film. Like, the throne room confrontation scene between Rey, Snoke, and Kylo Ren is just the Vader, Luke, and Palpatine scene from Return of the Jedi. They literally do the exact same thing of, oh, look, your friends are all dying. Oh, what are you gonna do? It's the same scene. And it's the same thing with Luke training Rey. He is now the Yoda figure, except for this now been subverted where he doesn't want to train Rey, and Rey just does her own thing. Also, Rey's just incredibly one note and plain. Like, she's just perfect at everything. When she's in the Millennium Falcon and she goes to the Salt Planet, whatever the hell it's called, and she arrives and she blows like 3 TIE fighters in a row. She blows them up and it's like, how? Why? What? My problem with Rey is not that she's a female, it's just that she's a contrively written character. Everything she does is perfect and without consequence and without flaw. And it's really annoying because I want to relate to this character because she could have been interesting. And you know what? I'm just going to say this now. I don't think Rian Johnson is a bad filmmaker. I don't think he's a bad director at all. And I don't think he's a terrible writer either. Because, I love Rian Johnson as a filmmaker. Knives Out is incredible. He's directed some of the best episodes of Breaking Bad. Ozymandias and The Fly, those are great episodes. Rian Johnson is a good filmmaker. And from a technical perspective, The Last Jedi is an incredibly well-made film. It's just that the story ideas are all half-baked. And that's because from what I understand and from what I recall, The Last Jedi is based off the first draft of the script, which to me is just baffling that a studio allowed Rian Johnson to make the film off one draft. Like, that's... No. I can't believe that. That's ridiculous. I also think it was a mistake in killing Luke Skywalker in this film, just because you need a constant figure from the original trilogy, and whilst the original plan was for it to be Leia, realistically, it should have been Luke, because Luke was the most important character in the main trilogy. He was our hero. Him force projecting himself onto Crate and then him dying because of that was just stupid. Like, the thing that's annoying about it is that Luke's last standoff in The Last Jedi is so cool. When he walks out and faces the First Order with a laser sword, that is fantastic foreshadowing that the film establishes at the very beginning.
What? I'm gonna walk out with a laser sword and face down the whole First Order?
It's great. And then, the First Order starts firing on him, and then he doesn't die, and you're like, whoa, what the hell, this is so cool. And then he faces Kylo Ren, and Kylo Ren just gets absolutely fooled around by Luke, and then you kind of just go, what's going on? And then you find out Luke isn't actually there, and you're just like, oh, that is badass. Luke just pulled the most, gangster move. And then he dies, and you're just like, why would you do that? If you wanted to kill Luke off, actually have him fly to Crate and actually be there to die. Because sure, yeah, whilst it's nice that we get a parallel to him looking at the binary sunsets on Act 2 and he dies, oh yeah, sure, that's nice and whatever. But to have him die facing Kylo Ren is just more powerful and more impactful, and in itself, is a much stronger parallel to him and Obi-Wan. Like, Luke has now become the master. That is a strong and interesting idea, and what they do in the actual film is just lazy and stupid and just... it's frustrating. I don't like the way Luke Skywalker dies in this film. Overall, The Last Jedi is a film I do not like. It's got some interesting ideas, and technically it is a beautiful film. Other than that, I don't like it. So The Rise of Skywalker is a dumpster fire of a film. It is not good at all. I think I enjoy it more than The Last Jedi, maybe, but that is purely just because the way the film is edited, it is at such a breakneck pace of just like, don't bother thinking about what's just happened, we're just gonna go to the next scene, and it just keeps going, and you're just like, what is going on? Nothing makes any sense. The thing is, I haven't rewatched this film since the cinema, and nor do I care to, so it probably is a worse film than The Last Jedi. It's just that I can enjoy The Rise of Skywalker more because I can laugh at it, where The Last Jedi just makes me angry because it squandered all the potential from The Force Awakens. But yeah, bringing Palpatine back was pointless. The way they wrap up the entire saga is just pointless and not really poetic. It's just... it feels really hollow and empty. They once again rip off the throne room scene from Return of the Jedi again. Like, there is nothing new in The Rise of Skywalker. It's just, oh, do you remember this thing? Yep, we're gonna do it again. Like, how many times are you gonna keep on ripping off the end of Return of the Jedi? The battle between Rey and Kylo Ren on the remnants of the old Death Star, kinda bad. Like, the choreography is awful. Daisy Ridley keeps using reverse grips and keeps swinging it around like a bat. Like, bad job on the choreographer's behalf. Like, why would you, like, have Rey fight like that? It doesn't make any sense. And you know what's the thing that pissed me off about that battle was that in the trailers, they used Duel of the Fates to market that. And I remember at the time being like, oh my god, that's so cool. And they don't use it in the actual film, and it's like, what? Why? There's a really fantastic edit someone's done online where they put in Duel of Fates during the Kylo Ren and Rey duel in Rise of Skywalker. And it's awesome. They even include little hints of Battle of Heroes at the very end, and it's like, even though it would not have saved the Rise of Skywalker as a film, like, the film itself is terrible, but by adding in those musical cues of Duel of the Fates and Battle of Heroes, it makes the battle between Rey and Kylo Ren thematically more powerful than what is actually in the actual film. From what I remember, there is no score in the actual fight in the film, it's just the waves crashing against the Death Star ruins, and it's like, no, you need this moment to be epic and poignant, and by putting in Duel of the Fates and Battle of Heroes, it parallels the battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan, but not only that, it also parallels Maul and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn. Contrived things like Force healing is stupid. The stupid bit where Finn's just like, Rey, I need to tell you something, and you think it's, oh, I love you, which I personally wouldn't have minded because I think Rey and Finn work perfectly together. They would have been a great couple. But in actuality, it's Finn basically going, Rey, I'm Force sensitive. Like, it's just a stupid way to phrase it. Killing off Ben Solo was just stupid and such a cheap cop-out. Like, him helping Rey fight Palpatine is cool and stuff, but then they fake out his death twice, and it's so stupid. Like, he dies, like, you think he dies because Palpatine, like, throws him down a chasm, and then he ends up surviving that, and then, like, Rey dies, so then he force heals her, and then they kiss, and then he dies, and it's like, what? Why? And his redemption is quite rushed, although it was really cool seeing Harrison Ford come back for this one scene. Like, it's a cheap trick, but it kind of works-ish, but, like, it doesn't fix his redemption either way. Like, Kylo Ren's redemption is kind of crap, especially since The Last Jedi promised that he was just going to go full-on evil, supreme leader, dictator. Like, it would have been really cool to see. Like, the original plan by Colin Trevorrow for his Episode 9 was so much more interesting than The Rise of Skywalker. You know, Colin Trevorrow's idea for Episode 9, the film The Duel of the Fates, sounded on principle really cool. Like, it was continuing the threads from The Last Jedi, and it had Jedi Force Ghost Luke basically torturing and tormenting Kylo Ren. That stuff sounded fascinating. Rey had a double-bladed lightsaber, which I'd been begging for since the start. In Force Awakens, once I found out she was a Jedi, I was like, she needs a double-bladed lightsaber. And she doesn't get one. Also, Rey being a Palpatine is stupid. Like, yeah, whilst it's an explanation of why she's so powerful, it's also just, like, too little too late. But also, a Palpatine? Like, what? The way it wraps up the Skywalker saga is just lazy and lame. Like, Rey returns to Tatooine and buries the lightsabers, and what's the binary sentinel? It's not a good film. It's not. It probably is worse than The Last Jedi, but at least from what I remember, I enjoyed watching this film more in the cinema, even though it's a worse film than The Last Jedi, probably. To me, the biggest problem I have with the Star Wars sequel trilogy was that it just seemed like it was such a waste of potential. You had Disney giving these films hundreds of millions of dollars to make these films perfect. They should have been hiring talent and had a plan for this franchise. I mean, this was, the legacy of Star Wars at stake here, and they squandered it. They basically just made a trilogy that was rehashing the same beats we'd seen from the original trilogy, and it's like, no, make something new and inventive. What the sequel trilogy should have been was that it should have been an all-out war between the Jedi and the Sith. Have Luke's Jedi Academy creating more Jedi, have a rival Sith Academy creating more Sith, and have it be this epic war between the Jedi and the Sith. It would have been fantastic. But nope, they just revisited the greatest hits of the original trilogy, and it's like, why? Do something unique and original. Why go back to the same old thing? I know George Lucas says it's like poetry, it rhymes, but George Lucas wanted to do something different too. He wanted to create something different and unique and out there. It probably wouldn't have worked as well if he had done it himself, but still, the ideas that he wanted to do were more interesting than what Disney did. Now, when it comes to The Mandalorian, I really like the show. Season 1 is very good. I think I prefer Season 2, but I think that's just because Season 2 has probably the coolest moment in most recent Star Wars memory, and that is when Luke Skywalker shows up to save the day, and it's like the coolest thing ever. I think this was Jeremy Jahns who said this, and he is wholeheartedly right when he says this. People just want to see their heroes being heroes doing heroic shit. And that's what the Mandalorian Season 2 finale delivered. It was just Luke Skywalker being a hero, saving the day, and it was awesome. But to talk about the actual Mandalorian, I love it. I love the character of Din Djarin. He is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. Pedro Pascal plays his character perfectly. His body doubles, who are pretty much doing most of the work in most of the episodes, are fantastic as well. The physical language of Mando is great. The relationship he has with Grogu is fantastic, and just, it's a really cool show. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, their vision for this story is really interesting, and they want to up the ante. And the prospects of Season 3 seem really promising. The idea of Din having to go back to Mandalore and essentially become the leader of the Mandalorians whilst also having to deal with people like Bo-Katan and other Mandalorians who are trying to take the Darksaber from him. It's really cool and interesting stuff. And not to mention, there's also some really good and fun episodic stories to be told in The Mandalorian. Those first couple seasons are really good when they have standalone episodes that are just fun and engaging. I love the episode in Season 2 with Mando and Bill Burr where they have to get Grogu back and they're on the planet and they have to infiltrate the Imperial base. It's really good stuff. Bill Burr is fantastic, and I jokingly say that he's my favorite Star Wars character. I mean, he's a fantastic character, don't get me wrong, but just, he's not the best. But, he's amazing, though. That episode was so good. I will say, I do think the pacing in Season 1 is a little bit uneven. Those first 3 episodes should have just been merged together to be, one, hour-long episode, because that's the problem I have with The Mandalorian. The episode lengths are way too short, and they are ridiculously short. They're, half an hour, including credits. That's so dumb. If I had to nitpick, I'd say the biggest problem I have with The Mandalorian is the score for the show being, it doesn't feel very Star Warsy. The score in itself is fantastic. I mean, the main theme of The Mandalorian is fantastic. Ludwig Göransson did an amazing job. It's just that, to me, it's very synthy at times, and whilst there is an orchestral theme, it doesn't feel like John Williams' work. To me, there is a disconnect between the work on Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and the work done by John Williams in the main Star Wars saga. But overall, I really do enjoy The Mandalorian. In many ways, I kind of wish the creative team of The Mandalorian were the ones that made the sequel trilogy. So, the Book of Boba Fett to me was a pretty lame show. Those first 3 episodes were so boring that I skipped episode 4, and then I heard episode 5 was interesting because they basically made it a Mandalorian episode and Din Djarin was in it. So I watched that and I loved it. It was phenomenal. It was probably the best episode of that season. And then the episode after that was again another Mandalorian episode with a 5-second cameo with Boba Fett. And the Luke Skywalker stuff in that episode was really cool. The deepfake technology and the way they improved on it was incredible. It looks so eerily real that it's incredible. The thing that does kind of bug me is that they didn't get Mark Hamill to voice that Luke Skywalker. It's his voice, but the way they managed to get the voice was that it was an AI doing it, and I don't know, it feels a bit off. Once you know it's an AI, you kind of just, it sticks out to you, you're kind of oh, that isn't Mark Hamill, yet that is just an AI, that's weird. And then, yeah, the finale of Book of Boba Fett was kind of lame, it just basically went, oh yeah, you like the Mandalorian stuff? Yeah, no, don't bother with that. Mando's in the episode, and he helps, Boba fight, but yeah, other than that, it was kind of lame. I also thought that the episodes that Robert Rodriguez directed in The Book of Boba Fett were terrible. Specifically the finale, like, oh my god. It was just boring and just... It didn't look good, and it felt really hokey and corny. Like, the moment where that guy with the trench coat does, like, that spin, like... It was so corny and hokey. Like, it didn't feel like Star Wars. It just felt cheap. But I think the cardinal sin of The Book of Boba Fett was that it was a terrible Boba Fett show. It didn't highlight Boba Fett. If anything, it sidelined Boba Fett. But also, the philosophy Boba Fett had in becoming a leader for Tatooine was just... It was so dumb. I aim to rule with respect, not fear. And it's like, you need both to be a crime boss in Tatooine. You need the people to fear you so that once they fear you, they respect you, and then you can treat them with kindness. This weird sudden burst of chivalry from Boba Fett just felt inorganic. This is not the same character from the original Star Wars trilogy. Like, that doesn't make... There was a massive disconnect here. Like, oh, we can't make Boba Fett a bounty hunter because we have Din being the bounty hunter now. So now we have to make him a crime boss that isn't really a crime boss. Like, I don't know. The Book of Boba Fett was not a good show. I didn't like it. That being said, though, I am looking forward to the Ahsoka Tano show, and I am dying to watch Obi-Wan. Like, Obi-Wan, to me, has so much potential. They're bringing back Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor, and we're gonna see, like, Clone Wars flashbacks, fingers crossed. I want to see that so badly, and just... I'm really excited for Kenobi, and I really can't wait for Mando Season 3 as well. So, all in all, that is my weird and complicated history and relationship with Star Wars. I like the Star Wars franchise, but to me personally, I don't hold it in as high of a regard as I do with, say, the Marvel Universe, the DC Universe, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. To me, whilst I understand the value and importance of Star Wars, specifically the original trilogy, from a narrative perspective, it's all over the place. There's like maybe 3 good Star Wars films, 4 good Star Wars films, 5 at most that are like really good, and everything else is either meh or pretty bad. But the Disney Plus shows have been good so far. I mean, aside from Book of Boba Fett, like I didn't like Book of Boba Fett, but when it comes to Mandalorian is great, and I really hope that things like Ahsoka Tano and Obi-Wan Kenobi are really good. Like, I hope Obi-Wan is good. Like, I'm expecting good things from it because they've taken so much time to do it, and Ewan McGregor wants to come back, and just, I hope it's good. But yeah, that is my weird relationship with Star Wars, and my question to you is, what is your relationship with Star Wars? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you on the same boat as me where you really like the franchise, but also, as a whole, it doesn't really gel and work for you? Did you grow up with Star Wars? Are you a Star Wars mega fan? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media, all that good stuff, and until we meet again, see you guys next time.